My name is Robin Supa King. I am a resident here of Durham Region, and I have been a member of the Great Lakes surf community since about 2005. Prior to that, though, I was a Filipino girl living by the shoreline. I grew up in Toronto, and my parents instilled in me very passionately that in order for us to be part of the land that they immigrated to, we needed to be included in it, which meant fishing, which meant boating along the Toronto Harbour, which meant gardening, which meant reaping what this land provided to us as immigrants.
Good morning, my name is Thomas, and I have the privilege of working with Unbounded and Othership, which are two of the biggest community when it comes to cold water exposure in Toronto. And we recently had an event with over 1,500 people going into the lake at once. That was pretty powerful to see. I truly believe that Toronto is the capital of cold exposure at this point, and we're doing so great thanks to both of those communities with Unbounded and Othership.
My name is Megan. I work for Swim Drink Fish. I'm our water programs coordinator based out of Toronto. The communities that I'm a part of, obviously the Lake Ontario community, we're out here on the waterfront every single day or every single week. I also recreate a lot in the Ottawa Valley. So back home I live on a lake, so I'm a part of a pretty cool community there where I grew up.
It began a long time ago when I discovered the Wim Hof method, which is breath work and cold exposure and mindset. And so I started coming down to the lake about 8 years ago and just doing my breath work practice and then going for a short swim and experiencing the cold water. And it really was because of Nikki that the community built itself like that. I was still quite content of seeing it in a different way and respecting the land in a different way and realizing that the shoreline, although here at the Humber, it's manufactured, it's man-made land here, it's reclaimed, but it's still nature, and you still really belong to it.
First time I experienced cold water was after my sister passed. My younger sister, one of the things she was world champion of triathlon. So when I went to sort out the clothing, I found her wetsuit, and something called me to put it on and to just go in the first body of water in the Alps in February of 2019. And that day I discovered that I could do it, and I discovered quite a relief from doing it. And that became a ritual for me to process the grief. Because I live in Toronto, Lake Ontario is the thing that's available here for water, and it's cold and it's healing, and I've slowly but surely processed the grief to a place of now being able to help others and to really just enjoy myself in the water, which is what I originally did with water, is just enjoy swimming. But it has such a deeper potential of healing when it's used in that optic, with that intention. And without Lake Ontario, I don't think I would have healed half as much as what I have today. It has been an essential part of my recovery. It was hard, but I needed hard. I needed the physical challenge for the emotional pain to be processed. And there are some days where it was still a little bit of frozen water, maybe a millimeter, and I could not go in. I had to go, and not even thinking of making a hole or anything. I just broke it with my body. I just pushed, the body was pushing to release the pain. And little by little, it came at nature's speed, really. It started feeling a little bit lighter, and I was able to be there for my family more. And then for nature, I've been cleaning beaches before swims, the days that it's actually doable. And just by sitting here next to this tree, I have 3 pieces of human disposables that are here, and it's everywhere. My theory is that I have a working body, so as long as it's working, I'll just bend over and gather the little bits that were left behind, and always think that the person that left it has a broken back and can't bend over, so I'll do it for them. And I think it's just at our own level, really. If we pollute it, we can unpollute. It's going to take everyone to slowly but surely go in that direction, to not let the next generation feel like it's okay to just drop a coffee cup out of the window when we're driving. All those little automatisms that, it's already dirty, might as well just add one more. Well, that's why I clean. That's why I clean to perfection, because first of all, Mother Nature thanks me when I turn around and I look and wow, it's clean now. It's whole, it's one again. But there is hope, there is hope. If we did it, we can undo it. That's my point.
Even the dog's like, don't do it!
But the whole name, Breathing in Nature, is about the spiritual connection to nature. Breathing, the root word of breathing, to inspire, is breathing in, inspire. Spire is spirit. That's where that comes from. Breathing is breathing in spirit. That's what the connection is. Breathing in nature is a spiritual experience about being in nature, being in the lake, being on the beach here, and receiving the energy that's all around us, whether it's the ground, whether it's the lake, whether it's the trees, the air, the animals, our friends. It's that connection is the spiritual element of breathing in nature, no matter where we are.
We get the fire and ice going, and then people arrive, and it's very important. One of the things that people often point out is how welcome they feel when they arrive. And that's so important, because every time we see a new face, I get so excited that
I love seeing new people
that
arrive.
somebody else has the courage to join us and go into the lake with us. And then we breathe together. Just the perfect preparation to get into the right mindset, get the body ready to face any fears, any misconceptions about the colds, or whatever's going on that day. It puts me in the right mindset. And breathing together also puts us in a state of group coherence. It connects us. Our heartbeats are the same after 3 rounds of breathing, and people are ready to face the cold together.
When you go in, when you go into cold water, it's cold. You lose your breath. You gasp. You have this fight or flight response. That's the point. But then you get control of your breath, and you calm down, and that's when you go into that pure moment of clarity, bliss, whatever it is, or it starts to shake stuff loose inside of you, some stuff that you've been holding back and you don't even know is there.
It definitely is a mind, body, heart, spirit practice. I never really had an idea of spirituality in my life, but connecting with the water in this new way, while I'm in the water, while I'm by the water, and it doesn't have to be like Ontario, any water now. I want to go in it, of course, but even just being by it, there's this sense of awe and a sense of belonging. And the water, I like to think of it as the water inside of me is communicating to the water out there, and there's this instant connection and peace. I was afraid of the cold water, of all the misconceptions that I was taught by my parents that it's bad for you, makes you sick. And when I discovered the cold
Makes
water, when I discovered the cold water and I came down to the lake, it absolutely strengthened my connection. One of the things we hear from people often when we bring this up is like, you can swim in Lake Ontario? Like, yeah, you can. It's beautiful.
It's a very clean lake overall.
Yeah. And but what I didn't expect is that it also changed my entire life to go into the cold water in the last 2 years. And not only did I meet the love of my life, but together we started to build this incredible community, and we started to see other people finding love, friendship, health, strength, and all those beautiful things that are available to us in nature. And it's been an incredible journey.
We met you guys, the Wasteland Plan, down here at the beach, and we were cleaning up garbage. And when we get here a little bit earlier just to stake out where we want to be, and we get our garbage bag out, and we just do a little cleanup around where we're meeting and pick up the endless cigarette butts that get left behind, and all the bits of plastic that gets washed up on the shore or blown out of the garbage cans.
Yeah.
And we start picking it all up, and we really throw out a bag of garbage every weekend, and just making our home here on the beach a little bit nicer.
I have such a connection with so many different bodies of water. Like sometimes, like I dream about certain rivers that just they reoccur in my head at night. But I do know that Lake Ontario, Lawani, Ontario, is my home waters because I was born in front of it. I grew up right by it. I have lived along its shores my entire life. So although I recognize that my ancestral waters are in the Philippines, or on the Western Philippine Sea, my family settled here on this. So this is my body of water, my home break. My biggest connection is to this, but then every time I go to the ocean, it's another kind of connection. Every time I go to a river, and in Tagalog it's ilog, that's another kind of connection. Like the way water flows is always such a fascination to me, whether it flows over a rock, breaks a wave breaking, or hits a jetty, or the way it hits me when I'm on a wave and I wipe out. It's so dynamic. Like life, I know that sounds a little cliche, but it's so dynamic in its different forms that it will either comfort me so much that I fall asleep, or scare me, and everything in between. So that connection of water movement, water stillness, is something I yearn all the time, and that's one of the reasons why I live the way I do and live where I live. A lot of that came from my mom and my dad. He came to this country in 73, I think, and how he lived in the Philippines was he fished, he hunted with the indigenous peoples of the Philippines, the Aita. And when he came here for opportunity, like a lot of immigrants did with my mom, the way his personality is that he did not want to get rid of that for the sake of work and for the sake of money. He needed something to keep him going, which was connecting with people who were also from water communities around the world, with people who appreciated that being in Canada didn't necessarily mean money. It meant like cultivating his culture and what he knew from the Philippines here with the land that he had landed on, that he had settled on. So from that, this Filipino man learned how to ski. He bought this small 16-foot aluminum boat when we were kids, and we would in the warmer months we would go and we'd boat along the shoreline. We would launch out of Murray Curtis Park in Long Branch along Humber Shores. And it was the most exciting thing for me as a kid to be in the water in the springtime. And it was just such a fun thing. And we would take that boat and we would go to the Muskokas. We'd go to Bala. We'd go to Hastings and just go fishing with my grandparents, and those were some of the happiest things that we did. In addition to that, they also had a community garden where they grew all kinds of vegetables, and that was just sort of his rebellion against religion, I guess, to just be part of where he was, and he lived that to his dying day. It's kind of like where it came from for me, where it was like, okay, so we lived by the water, and I was by the water all the time. So I knew that there was beaches here, but the idea of it in the winter didn't quite hit until later in life. So when I found out that you could surf here, because surfing was such a cool thing to think about when I was a teenager in the 90s. When I found out that people were surfing here, I was like, how do I do this? How do I just throw myself into this and like, let's go, I gotta do this. I started realizing that there was a community of surfers here back in 2004 or so, and I basically threw myself into it completely. It was something that sparked such a passion within me of like, I have to do this, and I put whatever resources I had, time, money, and asking questions, and maybe asking like all kinds of people, and just shamelessly being like, how do I find out, and what do I need to do to get into the water that I already know and see it in a different light. From there, I co-founded Lake Surfistas in 2014, and that's when I noticed a real shift in the community's growth of women who wanted to surf the Great Lakes, who wanted to stand up paddle. And since then, it's the seed that has been like sort of planted has grown into an enormous community of individuals who are searching for their own peace and their own refuge within the waters and the land that we live on. We were here for how many minutes, and we already have a pile of trash in front of us out of just this one little area. So in terms of like what we see and what's right in front of us, it's definitely the plastics pollution that's so overwhelmingly like defeating. Like you feel so defeated, especially sometimes when you're trying to do a beach cleanup and you can't pick up everything. And then you feel like you got to leave it because you can't take it all. There's that. And so, I mean, our own ourselves as consumers, we need to be cognizant of that. But a lot of it is also, we are not given a lot of options to go outside of that. So that comes down to a bigger issue of policy and manufacturing and recycling. And I feel like this is going to be a problem for a long time. And you can call me defeatist, but I don't think we're going to ever solve this problem. We can change policy through human action and through, and speaking to people, but the physical aspect of picking up every single piece of garbage and putting it somewhere else it's almost like a lost cause. But I don't want to think of it so much as like, oh, we should just give up on it. I still think we should protect it. And I still think that we should pick up whatever we can. You want to be as waste-free as possible, but we all know that in our modern lives, it's not always possible.
The problems that we primarily focus on as swim drain fish are combined sewer outfalls, which are our major source of pollution in our lake. It brings like sewage and other sewage debris into our water. And so that was the problem. There's been revitalization that's been ongoing for the last decade or so. So they've made improvements to wastewater treatment plants in the East End and some of the rivers that flow into the water. And so that's what's led to this existing revitalization, but there's still so much more work to be done. So as swim drain fish, there's kind of two ways to look at it. There's actions that can be taken, and those actions are very large scale. Like right now it's a whole systemic action. The entire sewage treatment, like all of our sewer systems need to be replaced. And we understand that doesn't happen overnight. It takes a huge amount of money and time, but there's also things that can be done in the meantime to help support that happening long term. So that's where I think swim drain fish comes in. We collect and provide the data necessary to sort of justify this revitalization. By monitoring the water too, we give people access to information about where, when, and how they should recreate in the water, which is really powerful because if there is going to continue to be major pollution events happening, people should know when that's happening and like when to not enter the water if they don't feel comfortable doing so. And then we also advocate for this change actively. So as we're collecting this data in areas where we feel like this change can happen, we're using the voices that we have to make sure people know about it and to empower other people to advocate for the water as well. I think right now it's at a state where there are pockets of really, really like good swimmable areas, especially in the East End. And that is an improvement from the past where there was a point where the entire shoreline wasn't swimmable. So we've seen this, we have like the evidence that it can be improved. But we kind of plateaued where we made these improvements. We have some accessible water, but there's so much of the shoreline that could continue to see these improvements. And then reach like a larger population of people and encourage more and more people to reconnect with the water. Whereas right now there's this huge divide between like Toronto and the waterfront. My passion for water, my call to water started in my youth, not on Lake Ontario, but on a different lake. But through that lake, I developed this passion for water in general. So like protecting water, advocating for water, and restoring it. Then through my program at Niagara College, I like learned the school tool set I needed to actually like apply those desires. Now, I just like through my job the last couple of months, or last year, I guess now, I've developed this like the community that exists around here welcomed me with open arms, and they're so passionate, and it was like a really fresh take on environmentalism because I feel like a lot of it's very doom and gloom. And I met this community here that is so passionate and so like positive about the potential for what Lake Ontario can be. And so through that community, I sort of like developed this deep passion for Lake Ontario as well, just because they were so uplifting. And now because I'm in it every day and I'm sampling and sort of recreating more and more, I just have this greater desire to continue to see the improvements in it.